Hi, today I'm going to show you how I figured out how to create my graph, my scatter plot for the number of recreational visitors to the Grand Canyon. So I looked at the table that I showed you in the previous video, the one that was on the computer, and I wrote down what the most recent number of visitors was and what the very first year number of visitors was. So I subtracted them to find the difference, and the difference was a little over 6 million visitors. I counted up how much space I had on the graph, like how many lines I would have available to use, which was 38. And so I figured out, like, out of these visitors, how many were going to have to be represented by each of the spaces on the graph, each of the 38 spaces. So this was the official number, but like counting up by that every time and labeling my graph like in increments of 166,914, blah, blah. That did not sound very fun or like a really easy to read graph. So I rounded it up to 200,000. Then I went over to my graph itself, and before I even numbered anything, I just counted like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That would be 100,000. No, sorry. 200,000, 400,000, 600,000, 800,000, 1 million, 12, 14, 16, 18, 2 million, 22, 24, 26, 28, 3 million, and so on to make sure that they would even fit. And then once I realized it would fit, I went back and actually numbered. And to write out the whole 200,000, that wasn't that big of a deal. It would just be 3 more zeros. But I knew once I got up here into these larger numbers, I would be writing into the millions, and that just seemed like a lot of zeros. And I wanted to keep this as clean and neat as possible. So I made my axis label for the y-axis say number of visitors in thousands, so that the reader would know you have to like add a comma and 3 more zeros after any of these numbers. So it's not actually 6,400, it's 6,400, 000. So it would be 6,400,000, and so on any of these. Okay, so then I also went to my table where I had listed all the years and recreation visitors for every 5 years. And I talked about this in my previous video. I listed how many years since 1915, so that when I went over here on my x-axis, I have years since 1915. So like this 0 line, my y-axis is 1915. That would be 0 years since 1915. 10 years would have been 1925, 20 years, 1935, and so on. So that I wasn't writing the actual year itself, but how many years since 1915. And I didn't have to calculate that as I went. I had already put that in my table.